My kind of segue from above ground activism to direct action took place after a certain period of time where you're standing outside. I'd been involved in activism for about we'll say about a year, and you stand outside a McDonald's and you flyer with why vegan pamphlets, and that's a great thing. I stand by that 100%. There's a lot more that I was doing that I really started to question after a certain period of time. Particularly, we'd go to like the pet store that bought dogs from the puppy mill, and we would protest that place. We'd go to the fur store and we'd stand outside, with a sign. We'd go to the University of Washington. They had the health sciences building there. It was a huge vivisection apparatus. And we'd make our little signs with pens that said, please stop killing animals or what have you. And, I began to reflect, and I would look back on, a year or more of my activism, and I thought, how many animals did I really save? We were very polite, we were very well-intentioned, but ultimately, again, if you're going to be an advocate on behalf of animals, ultimately it's about what's best for the animals, and it's about what's effective. And I started to reflect and realize, at the end of the day, how many animals did we really save? And I realized, sort of this formulaic protest model just was not getting the job done.
How was it that you were first indicted under the charges related to the direct action?
Well, that's a long story. I got indicted in 1998 for a wave of mink releases that happened across the Midwest in 1997. And what had happened is there had been a 6-week, it was actually a 2-week period in fall of 1997, and you had 6 mink releases across the Midwest. You had 1 in South Dakota, 2 in Iowa, and 2 or 3 in Iowa, and 3 in Wisconsin, rather. So you had 6 mink releases in a 2-week period. And shortly after the last mink release, myself and one other person, we were seen surveying fur farms. We were seen passing a large fur farm, the Zimble Mink Ranch in, I think it was Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And the Linda Zimble, one of the owners of the fur farm, she got in her car, she followed us. She thought we were acting suspicious. We had no idea at the time the FBI had put out this bulletin across the larger Midwest region, alerting fur farmers as well as law enforcement to look out for a red Geo Metro, which is what we were driving. And apparently we'd been seen around fur farms, and there was people were starting to connect the dots, fur farmers and the FBI. And so she gave chase. She called the police. The police pulled us over. They impounded our vehicle when we refused to consent to a search. And they turned up a lot of things in that vehicle that was used as the basis for an indictment. They found bolt cutters. They found fur farm addresses. They found ski masks and the whole kind of laundry list of things that you might use if you were going to raid a fur farm. So it certainly didn't take a whole lot of investigative work or too many leaps of logic on their part to determine that we might have something to do with these raids. So that was used to indict us a year later.
Were they connecting you to any specific raid with evidence of you actually?
That came out later. What happened later is that they used the wire cutters that they found in our vehicle. They sent that to the FBI crime lab in whatever, DC it is. And they did what's called tool mark analysis, and they basically did a sort of this microscopic zoom-in view of the bolt cutters, and they matched that, and the specific grooves on the bolt cutters, they matched that to some of the wire samples that were taken from these fur farms. And they found that I think on 1 or 2 of these fur farms, there was a perfect match. So that was kind of used as a stepping stone to just indicting us for the whole package.
Was it before or after that analysis that you got charged with animal enterprise terrorism?
That was the animal enterprise terrorism indictment. That indictment I was charged with 2 counts of animal enterprise terrorism, which sounds like a really crazy, scary charge. And at the time, it was actually only a misdemeanor, so you faced up to a year in prison for that. Now, of course, you would face up to 10 years in prison for what I faced a maximum of 1 year in prison for in '98. So it's kind of a different climate now, to say the least. But I was charged with 2 counts of animal enterprise terrorism and then 4 counts of disruption of interstate commerce through threat or violence.
How were you eventually incarcerated for the charges?
I don't like to tell that story. I got arrested at a Starbucks in San Jose, California. And I was waiting for a friend of mine. I was going to meet her. And, it was just a freak thing. A cop thought that I was acting somewhat suspicious. Maybe I didn't fit the profile for the typical Starbucks patron. But he came up and started asking me questions about what I was doing, and it was a big hangout spot. I learned later, a big hangout spot for police in San Jose, this particular Starbucks, and asked me what I was doing. And you should always do with a cop, I refused to speak to him about anything, and he became very aggravated and placed me under arrest under what I was actually just a totally false pretext. And when they got me down to the station, they scanned my fingerprints and the warrants came up from '98. So that was 7 years later. That was 2005.